Here we go again. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what appears to be the current state of the DCEU, the films that Warner Brothers is making based off of DC properties, because there's a lot going on, a lot that kind of isn't going on. So I think sort of the biggest thing right now is there's conflicting reports as to exactly how extensive this all is, but the last few times these sorts of things have come out, they've turned out to be more or less true, and that is reshoots for Justice League. Rumor is right now that they are extensive. Now, reshoots in and of themselves aren't news. Reshoots happen on every big budget film, and it kind of always annoys me when internet-based media treats it like a big story. It's like, oh, there's reshoots. Why are there reshoots? Because they're scheduled at the time they do the thing. Because there's always reshoots. Because you get in the editing room and you're going, oh, you know what? We need another go on that, or you know, we really should have had a scene here to transition better, or oh, you know what? We need to drop that scene, but that means we need to drop this information elsewhere so that everything flows. That's filmmaking. Reshoots are a part of that. But like I said, the last couple times that news of extensive reshoots have come out, they turned out to be pretty accurate. And those are kind of the two extremes if you want to use examples of how good or bad this could turn out. One is Suicide Squad, the other is Rogue One. Now, Rogue One I liked quite a bit. And as far as I can tell, the reshoots did help shape it into what it is, but I'm gonna come back to that. So starting with Suicide Squad, and I know some people like this movie. I'm friends with some people who like this movie a lot, but even if you like it, I think you have to cop to the fact that it's a choppy movie. And you can tell just from the feel of it that this thing was rearranged and rejiggered and put together from disparate parts, and you just feel that with the way it's structured, the way that it treats certain information like it's a big reveal, but it's stuff that the film has already shown us an hour ago, or how jarring the transition in terms of tone is from how the thing opens to how it is in the bulk of the action. You know, the whole thing doesn't have a flow. It's very, very choppy. Now, if you're going on the more positive side of the results of massive reshoots, we have Rogue One, which, as I said, I like quite a bit. But even Rogue One, the front end of it, again, it's choppy. You can see the stitches that are holding it together. And we've got stuff that just feels either shoehorned in because it was added later, or feels completely vestigial because they probably should have just dropped it because it was a holdover from the earlier version. I'm talking about stuff like Saw Gerrera and the Mind Squid. What? My point is that massive reshoots in and of themselves don't necessarily mean the end result is going to be bad, although they're not a great indication. They are a sense that something is not currently working. However, it does show, you know, that there's a desire to fix it, not just cobble something together and shove out into theaters, which is what studios will do when they get into an editing room and realize they've got a turkey but decide it's not worth the money to fix it. Obviously, this is a major film. It's worth the money to fix whatever the problem is. That being said, there was also word right when the thing started shooting that they had a writer on set to, you know, be doing rewrites immediately because they were trying, I think they were trying to respond to the criticisms that were leveled against Batman v Superman as they were shooting. They had to do it that way because they didn't put a gap in between when Batman v Superman came out and when they started filming Justice League. The shooting picked up almost immediately, and I think that has really bitten them in the butt, because if they'd had some time, I think they really just assumed that, well, they either rolled the dice or they assumed that everyone was going to love Batman v Superman, and that was what all fans wanted. And again, I know some people really liked it, but it was divisive. And don't just give me, oh, it's just Marvel fan, but no, there are lots of DC fans who really have a lot of problems with that movie. So it was divisive amongst the fans, and they didn't allow the kind of gap to make adjustments from that reaction before they got into filming the Justice League. So they've been trying to do it as they go, and obviously that didn't work, and now they're trying to fix it after the fact. Again, that could work, but this has been, everything kind of indicates a troubled production, and not troubled in the sense of like on-set drama, but in terms of trying to come up with a coherent end result. And I'm not shocked by this because It's the same creative team that did Batman v Superman. Why would we expect Justice League to be significantly different? And of course, now we're entering a world where the studio at least wants it to be notably different. But you've got the same guys behind it who initially conceived it when they thought Batman v Superman was going to be what everyone wanted. So it was conceived initially in that vein, and they're trying to change it into something else as they go. That's not a good indication. Now, as far as other stuff going on, we've had some directors' names thrown out in regards to Flash. I'm going to call it right now. I don't think the Flash movie's actually going to happen. If it does, it's absolutely not happening in time for this 2018 release date. They need to stop kidding themselves. I know he's supposed to be the fastest man alive. They're not going to shoot it that quick. All they've got solidly is a star. It's not entirely clear if the page one rewrite script that they ordered is ready to go. They're talking to directors, and even if they've got a new script that is ready to go, the directors that they're talking to, people like Robert Zemeckis, these are people who are going to want to put their own stamp on it. They're not going to just want to be handed a script and shoot it as is. So it's going to have to be there's no time. None of this is going to happen. And I honestly do expect that it'll get pushed back to an indeterminate date and eventually canceled. Because and I've said this before, I can't think of anything that you would do in a Flash movie that has not already been done on the Flash TV show. And speaking of films that aren't going to happen, Cyborg's not going to happen. Well, no, I'll put a slight asterisk on that. If Cyborg turns out to be the surprise breakout star of the Justice League movie, unless that happens, he's not getting his own movie. That's absolutely not going to happen. And I think Warner Brothers knows this, because all of the newer projects that, they've been announcing and pushing forward and actually successfully attaching talent to in terms of directors have all been related to Batman. It really does seem like Warner Brothers would much rather be making the Batman extended universe rather than the DC extended universe. And there's a part of me that's tempted to say, look, just go ahead and do that, because Batman really does seem to be the only character you guys have ever had any luck in figuring out. They've stumbled with Batman too, don't get me wrong, but at least they've got a stronger track record with Batman than they have had with Superman or any of these other characters that they're introducing so far. So yeah, fine, just make it the Batman extended universe. Leave this other stuff alone. I'm not quite going there yet because early word on Wonder Woman has been coming out. Now, not official reviews, those are all still embargoed, but people who went to press screenings, who went to preview screenings, they've hit the point where they've been allowed to go on social media and give their impressions of the film, and they are very positive. Now, you always got to take these things with a grain of salt, because this is general audience, and that's not me saying general audiences don't know anything, but that is me saying if you go to a preview screening with, a crowd of people who are excited to be there, you're not necessarily going to be looking at the thing as critically, and I say that from experience. I actually really like the film Alien vs. Predator, and I acknowledge that a big part of the reason why I like it is because I saw it at a preview screening with a ton of people who were thrilled to be there, and we had a great time watching this movie. And if I hadn't watched it under those circumstances and I'd gone, after it came out and it was a less crowded theater and it wasn't packed and people weren't cheering, I probably would have gone, nah, like a lot of people did. So I understand that environment can really amp up the reaction, either positive or negative. Whatever the reaction people tend to have at those screenings, it gets bumped up to 11. But it has pretty much all been positive. And for a point of comparison, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is very good and I like a heck of a lot, that also had very positive initial reaction from these sorts of screenings, but there were a lot more sort of the caveats. People like, it's good, but there's this thing and maybe it's not as good as the first, and maybe that's just because they had something to compare it to, but this has been more overwhelmingly positive, and that is a good first word on Wonder Woman. Now, at this point, I'm not reversing my stance, my previous stance of that I'm not going to the Wonder Woman movie. And as a reminder, the reason for my stance on that is unless I have reason to believe that it is great, I don't want to give my money to Warner Brothers anymore. I don't want to financially encourage them to keep doing what they're doing, because I think what they're doing is terrible and disrespectful to these characters. But I have always maintained that if word on Wonder Woman is that it's genuinely great, not just okay, but genuinely great, I will give it a shot. And And I'm now paying enough attention that I'm open to it, and I would like to be able to sit down in front of you guys and say, you know what, I was convinced it couldn't possibly be good. I was wrong. I don't know if that'll happen. I would very much like it to, but we'll see when we get there. Here's the thing though, I wish I could hang a whole bunch of hope on that. Well, Wonder Woman will be great and then everything's fine from here. Well, no, it's not, because after Wonder Woman is Justice League, which, oh boy, guys, it's not gonna be impossible for that to be good, but the chances of that one coming out and being a winner, that's got a lot stacked against it. And more to the point, even if Wonder Woman is great, the way the film has been set up in terms of the story that they're telling and where it is, they've shot themselves in the foot as far as following it up goes. Because I think if it's going to be great, a part of what is going to allow it to be great is that it is divorced enough from the cinematic universe they've been creating, because it is set so far ahead in time that it didn't have to, you know, feed into and feel like those other films. It was allowed to be its own thing. But unfortunately, because of the timeline and what they've already established about the character, they can't really do that again, because they established in Batman v Superman that after World War I, she went away. And she only just came back in Batman v Superman, so what can you do with her? You basically have no choice but to bring her up to modern era, which means, well, now we're back into the territory of the world as shaped by Batman v Superman, until they can reset the whole thing, if they're even able to do that. Even in terms of Wonder Woman as an individual franchise, even if this movie is great, that does not make me suddenly go, well, at least we've got this one franchise. Like, well, we'll have the one film. I figure maybe the only thing that they could do is if they went as a follow-up, you know, and it's set timeline in between, they'd have to go like all in on the Greek mythology angle, and she'd have to be kept out of the real world. And I guess it depends on what works and doesn't work about the movie as to whether or not that's a good idea. I guess that's where things are. Again, I want Wonder Woman to be good. I want Wonder Woman to be great, but even if it is, it's going to exist as an outlier for what we've gotten so far and what I think we're gonna get in the immediate future. The more separate from everything going on that a film is allowed to be, as opposed to trying to set up and be integrated with everything else, the better shot it's gonna have at being any good. So that gives me a little hope for maybe Aquaman. That's kind of it. And Wonder Woman, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Not committing to seeing it yet. I want to see what the initial actual reviews say. But I'm hopeful. And I haven't been able to say that for a while. Again though, not hopeful for the DCEU, just hopeful for Wonder Woman. That's not nothing. So that's where I am on the state of all this stuff. What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. There's also the Punch Like a Girl podcast, also available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.